So we're doing grammatical system rhetoric. My name's Andrew,
My name's Anthony.
and here we go. So where did it come from? It came from a democratic institution that arose in Sicily and Greece. This led to a higher need for speech making and education for the masses. In teaching this, an emphasis was placed upon the grammatical nature of speech. So basically, they really thought that there was a need to teach rhetoric and the whole philosophy of that and how to best teach it. What was its purpose? Basically, they wanted to break up rhetoric into smaller pieces that was more understandable and more teachable. And so, by doing this, they kind of made it a little bit more easy. They made it easier for the masses to understand.
Yeah. So how did they actually do that? How did they break it up, chop it up? Well, they started by defining the Speech Act in two ways. They defined it methodologically, that's a tongue twister, and substantively. Methodologically, what that is it distinguishes rhetoric from grammar, logic, and poetry. It puts rhetoric in its own category. And substantively, that understands the relationship between rhetoric, politics, and ethics. Basically saying that rhetoric has intrinsic connections to other parts of everyday life, and substantively, that definition shows the relationships between that. So the next thing they did is they divided the Speech Act functionally. Functionally in the sense of how it actually operates and what parts of it you need to be aware of. The parts are the speaker, the speech, the audience occasion, and they also speculated the importance of each part. So different writers would have ranked those three speech acts differently, but what you need to know is that there's a speaker, there's a speech, and there's an audience occasion. The next thing they did is distinguish the different types of speeches. There's three different types of speeches, which we have covered in depth in class: legislative, judicial, and epidictic. The grammatical system does not seek to super define those as much as just distinguish that there are different types of speeches, so that we, for our purpose of understanding, can recognize rhetoric is used in three different ways in the speech making. And they also identified the different characteristics of each type. So not an exhaustive definition, but more of a classification of sorts. The next thing they did is recognize the different offices of communication. Offices of communications, the five of them are invention, disposition, style, memory, and delivery. All of them E. Hinger ascribes or basically recognizes as offices of communication for the purpose, or they all serve different purposes, and each of them are assigned a specific function. And then there's sub-classifications and micro-adjustments. These are the very small, minute details that the grammatical system of rhetoric kind of attacked. It did this in two ways. It devised vocabularies for discussing types of proofs, or also characters of styles and the parts of speech. So as you can see, it's very minute, it's very small. It also arranged grammar into a teachable pattern. The number one thing to consider with all of this is that it had this grand scope of teaching rhetoric to the masses, so it was very minuscule in its defining and classification and devising of the different aspects of rhetoric.
Some of the weaknesses and drawbacks of this was the oversimplification of everything, and the actual inherent attempt to make everything understandable and teachable. They oversimplified it to a point to where it didn't go in depth of what each subject properly needed to be able to explain and understand. The reduction of these complex matters into their subsidies was an attempt to make everything so extremely teachable that really the actual meat of the subject wasn't actually being taught. It was just the simple ideas of rhetoric without actually understanding rhetoric. The unsophistication of the relationship between the speech and the listener, this kind of came to come to a point that the act of speeching lacked concern for the listener, and this just oversimplified everything to a point to where it really wasn't teaching anything. Some of the mnemonic devices that were used to simplify the teaching of rhetoric would be an example would be like PEMDAS that you use in math, where it'd be PEMDAS, PEMDAS, parentheses, exponential, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So we know PEMDAS that's in order, that lets us know exactly how we should go through in solving a math equation. This not only lets us know what we should do first, but in the order of things should be done. And that's how mnemonic device